are listening to Not on the Payroll right here at notonthepayroll.com. You can check us out on Thursday nights at KJAS 107.3 FM out of Jasper. You can check us out on Facebook and check us out on YouTube and now on Rumble. Whenever YouTube decides to block people's stuff, well, they get some competition. So now we're on Rumble. But here's the thing. We have the privilege tonight of sitting down with Mr. Daniel Miller and Mr. Mack Dunkin of the Texas National Movement. Now, man, we really appreciate you guys taking some time out of your schedule to really it's the Texas Nationalist Movement, correct?
That's
Did I get
correct.
that right? Okay. And also Texit. Is that correct? There you go.
Texit.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Guys, we really appreciate y'all
from the British, did you?
Yeah. We really appreciate you guys for taking some time with us today and just really kind of filling us in. One of the things I have been encouraged about is the fact that you guys have been around for a while. A lot of times, I think how long have you guys been in operation or functioning? Because I know it's well over a decade.
Yeah, I crossed that proverbial line in the sand on August 24th, 1996.
Okay.
That was the day. That's the day that I made my personal pledge to see Texas as a free and independent nation, or the gravedigger pat me in the face with a shovel, one of the two.
Right.
But there were some definite wilderness years there for about 9 years. But starting 2003, a handful of us got together and said, "Look, this needs to really happen." So we did this big 2-year-long study of independence movements around the world, and kind of looked at that explosion of independent nation states over the last 75 years. We created a strategy and a plan, and in November of 2005, the TNM was born.
Okay. Now, so tell us kind of who you guys are specific to. Yeah, I see you guys. See, tell us who you guys are to the organization, Mr. Mack. What role do you play?
I currently serve as a local coordinator out of Lufkin.
Okay.
That area kind of has expanded in being able to start local groups in other places. Woodville, Jasper, Livingston, Diboll, Nacogdoches, Zavala, and various other places trying to just help the organization as best I can in this area.
When did you actually come on board?
I've been here just about 2 years.
Okay.
As far as my story is concerned, Daniel's being very humble about his story. We were talking about this at the convention, and Miss Kara was telling us how they started. There were so many times that it was just the two of them in the room taking the stand, and quite a few have joined since then. So I think that is extremely noteworthy.
Yeah.
Because of the effort that's been put in. So I came in a couple of years ago. I had been looking, being a preacher. I've been a preacher for 35 years, all across.
Well, we won't hold that against you.
Well, that's all right. That's all right. Old brother Reagan back in Tennessee used to tell me, I did a radio program there. He'd say, "You preachers need to take it easy on that old devil." I said, "Why is that, Mr. Reagan?" He said, "Because if it wasn't for him, you wouldn't have any business."
Well, that is true.
Very true.
That is true.
Now, Jesus said, "You shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free." And it's all about freedom. You can't get there until you have truth. So I ran across the Texas Nationalist movement and began to look and search. And I liked the style. I liked the approach. And so I jumped on board and I volunteered, and I'll do anything for them that I possibly can.
There you go. I remember one of the first times I was exposed to this guy, Daniel Miller. It was very interesting and made me nervous at the same time. I watched a video. I can't recall who exposed me to it, but I saw this video it was on someone's phone from you in a barn dragging a line in the sand.
Gonzales, home of the come and take it flag. I remember that.
Yep. That was the first time that was the first time that I was exposed to some of your work, some of what you guys have been doing. One of the things I wanted to get to is just for you guys to go, just kind of tell, because in the pursuit of expansion, a lot of it boils down to educating the people on the realities. And to be honest with you, I don't mean this with any disrespect, but this is very much a reality that, a lot of times whenever this conversation comes up, it normally comes up in kind of the same circle for the most part of, I don't know, like Bigfoot and lizard people and flat earth and in Texas secession. It's almost like it's this conspiratorial type of topic, if you will, where it's like, okay, all right, so if you really think that Texas can secede from the Union, then you obviously believe in the flat earth or whatever, lizard people, or, Joe Biden's been dead for 20 years and somebody's wearing a mask up there on stage, this type of thing. And so my question is, how do we get over that hurdle? Because I really believe that there are some people out here who want to, they're doing exactly what Mr. Mack has done. They are looking. So how do we get over that hurdle?
Well, look, my first suggestion is if you're running into people who are equating Texas secession with Bigfoot and lizard people, you probably need to quit hanging out at the methadone clinic, right? Let's get you out someplace, get you a new circle of friends.
That's right.
We'll help you. Okay.
Sure.
But no, all kidding aside, here's the thing. And this is what people need to understand. That is a line of thinking that is promulgated by the political establishment, that this is somehow marginal, that this idea is fringe.
Right.
And part of the strategy for the TNM since day one has been to dispel that myth, right? Because when we founded the organization, the only third-party polling data that existed showed that support for Texas independence was in single digits, right? Now, the good news is that we've always polled higher than the approval rating of the United States Congress, which polls generally somewhere right above or below leprosy. Okay, so it's not a great feat to poll higher than those guys.
Sure.
But when we got out there and started engaging in the work like Mack was talking about, which is engaging with people, going out there and doing the normal retail politics, our experience was very different than what the poll number showed. So, you begin to fast forward and you look at the Research 2000 poll in 2009, where it showed about right under half of Republican voters supported independence, 40% of independents and 15% of Democrats. You fast forward to 2014, where you had the Reuters Ipsos poll that showed 54% of Republicans believe Texas should withdraw from the Union. You had right at half of independent voters and even over a third of Democrats that believed it. Okay, so let's just stop there for a second. In 2014, understand that at that point, we were already a majority of support in the dominant political party in Texas, the political party that held every statewide elected office, that held majorities in both the House and the Senate, and a vast number of county level elected positions, right? That's the Republican Party. Right. Those numbers, and you got to think about it, that's 2 years into Obama's second term, and we already owned a third of Texas Democrats. Okay, so that's 2014. Now you fast forward to just what happened recently, literally the news that broke over the last 48 hours. The Republican Party of Texas, that same dominant political party that I just mentioned, has officially added not one, but 2 planks to its platform calling for a vote on Texas independence. This morning, news broke of third-party polling that polled Texans on the Texit question, and the response across all parties was 66% likely voters would vote Texas out. So tell me, when people come at it from that angle and say, well, this is some marginal or fringe, well, What does it take to not be marginal and fringe? If we own 62/3 of Texas voters, the dominant political party in the state of Texas, over half of independent voters, and even a third of the Democratic Party, then I would say that anyone that is talking about Texas being outside of the mainstream is themselves operating on the margins and the fringes of politics and society.
Okay. So having said that, how do, just in a simple way, I mean, just for the layman, I'll say the blue collars out here. All right. How is that achieved from an economic standpoint, considering the fact that the state of Texas relies a lot on federal funds?
Oh, you stopped there. I thought there was about to be more.
No. I mean, it's just because the thing is, when we're sitting around drinking beer and coffee, or whiskey or whatever, this type of conversation, it basically goes like this. I mean, hey man, what do you think about all this Texas secession stuff? Do you think this stuff is real, or do you think this is just cosplay for adults, or what? What's your I mean, do we go buy a coonskin hat and go out there and learn how to make musket balls and this type of deal? And then once you get past those moments, it's like, okay, enough of the foolish talk. Literally, what's the literal way? How do we walk away from this thing on two levels, economically and considering the fact that there have been there have been situations in the past where, it kind of laid down a precedent where a state could not just walk away. It seems like a fight might be on the agenda.
Well, look, this is not the 19th century anymore, right? We woke up in the 21st century. Since World War II, we've seen 140 brand spanking new self-governing independent nations pop up around the world. They didn't fall from space. The earth didn't get any bigger. There were people just like us that wanted simply the right to govern themselves and not be governed by people that they didn't elect, forcing policies on them that they didn't want.
Sure.
But look, if you want to talk about the reality of the situation, right? That like when you began to talk about the economics of the situation, there is one of the first mischaracterizations that we have to knock out of the boat right out of the gate. And it's simply this: Texas overpays anywhere from $103 to $160 billion every single solitary year into the federal system. Okay. That's not how much we pay total. That is how much we overpay. Okay. So what that means is that every dollar that comes out of your pocket and my pocket and every working person here in Texas and goes to the federal government, gets an administrative haircut, gets another cut to get distributed to other states for their various social experimentation programs, Pakistani transgender studies or whatever kind of ridiculous nonsense they want to, send their state into bankruptcy. Sure. And then the rest of that gets sent back into Texas with strings attached where they say, we're going to give you some money, but you must spend it this way. And then you must tax your people again to match these funds to administer these programs. Right. So much so that State Representative James White, one of my favorite things he ever told me was this. He said, because of that relationship with the federal government, the legislature has been relegated to do three things: educate, medicate, and incarcerate. Beyond that, it's all about administration of federal programs. And so when we talk about Texas withdrawing from the union, we're talking immediately about $103 to $160 billion staying right here in Texas in the Texas economy, right? Now imagine for a moment, we're already the 9th largest economy in the world. What does another $160 billion circulating in our economy do for our families, do for our communities, and do for our state? I mean, it's huge. And that's just one aspect of the economic case that we can make.
Okay.
And Jay,
so you had something there, Mr. Mack?
Yeah, just going to follow up with that. This and every other point just about that we're going to talk about this evening is going to go back to what you said at the beginning. And then couple of the points that we talked about thereafter. And that is, first of all, on how social media, whoever that is trying to control the dialogue. You alluded to that. Facebook, Rumble, et cetera, or YouTube, whatever it is, trying to control the dialogue. If I can control the dialogue, I can control the information that goes to you. I can influence you and what you think. Right? I've seen that not only as a preacher, but I'm also a psychology professor. All right. And so if I can control that data, then I can sway minds. So now we go back to the other things, Bigfoot, flat earth, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
The people who are allowing themselves to be fed that information, Solomon said, the man who pleads his cause first seems right. And then his neighbor comes and examines it.
Right.
Okay. So what we have to do is we have to get people thinking again. And I'm going to tell you, the people in the Texas Nationalist movement are thinkers. I see them every day, 428,000 plus, thinking, concentrating, focusing on every detail, everything we can learn. So we've got to make sure we understand this control of information that's out there is swaying a lot of people's minds.
Well, and that brings up a great topic, because I'll be honest with you, man, it almost seems like, I was having a conversation today with a friend of mine. We're out on the golf course and we're sitting here talking about, a couple of different philosophies and just going back and forth. And he turns to me at one point and he says, with all of the information out here that we have access to, what is the truth? And I said, that is kind of the dilemma right now. Everybody is it's like white noise. There's so much white noise. Yeah. It's like getting people. And whenever I make the statement, about, the flat earth and the lizard people and all this stuff, when secession is actually put in that context, it's really more out of just the baffled mind or the weary mind of trying to find out what the truth is in a lot of ways. Because I don't believe, myself, when I started hearing about secession or the potential of secession back years ago, I started thinking, okay, how practically does that work? Because I understand, I get it. I understand rallying the troops. I understand rallying the people to man up and stake their claim. At the same time, one of two things is going to happen, and I couldn't see at that point how bloodshed wasn't going to be in the middle of it. Because I'll be honest with you, how does the United States respond? Because you just made a statement there, Daniel. You just made a statement about the different countries that have come into being over the past number of years, and I get that. But the difference is, it ain't the ninth largest economy in the world that's doing that. You know what I'm saying? I mean, granted, all those countries may have their own economies and all this thing, and obviously they do. But what I'm saying is, it's not a situation where you've got Texas who is fixing to roll out, and the United States is just going to go, it's been fun and it's been real, but we'll see you guys and let us know if you need any help. I don't see it going down that simply. You know what I mean? Even from a military standpoint, because what are some of the practicals even involved on that end? Because there's a lot of people who probably share some of the same idealism, but at the same time, picking up a weapon and having to potentially tear away instead of walk away is a totally different conversation. So.
Well, yeah, and again, look, I refer to the warmongering discussion as apocalypse pornography, right?
Sure.
Because there is a reason that the Mad Max movies made millions of dollars at the box office, is because people like to imagine all those things. But I'm going to tell you, in the real world on these issues, the issues of self-determination and independence, the truth is far less dramatic, right? So let me just give you the process, and then I'm going to ask you some questions. So we are committed to invoking the rights of Texans under Article 1, Section 2, to put the question of Texas independence to a vote of the people. Okay. So what that means is that in a free, fair, full election of all Texans, you will have the opportunity, as all Texans will, to walk into a polling station, look at a ballot, and answer the question of should the state of Texas reassert its status as an independent nation. So we know that independence referenda typically have somewhere in the ballpark of an 85% voter turnout. That's, global numbers aggregated over decades. So 16 million voters, 85%, let's say that's the floor turnout to vote in this thing. And over 50% of those people, given poll numbers, I believe it'll be 60-40 or 65-35, vote in favor of it. So essentially what you're saying is millions of people, millions of Texans will have gone to the polls, and millions of Texans will have said, this is what we believe. We believe that we should govern ourselves. The day after it happens, nothing changes. Literally everything stays the same. No one's getting guns. Right. No one's running IRS agents out at gunpoint. Instead, what happens is the legislature goes into session and begins to deal with the constitutional, statutory, international, and negotiated issues that are all part of an orderly Texit process. So at what point does the federal government decide, you know what? Hello, Joint Chiefs, it's me, President Potato Head. I want you to go murder these Texans because I don't like the way they voted. Is that when it's going to happen? Is that when they're going to call up the troops? Because I can tell you this right now. One of the other things this poll that dropped this morning showed was other states were polled as to their belief about the use of force against Texas if it were to withdraw from the Union. And the top percentage was 7% of American people in other states believe that military force should be used. So do you honestly believe that the United States federal government, who has shed the blood of our grandfathers, grandmothers, our fathers and our mothers, some of us, our sons and daughters, to go fight, bleed, and sometimes die for the right of self-determination for other people, is going to issue an order to a military that is well over 1 in 6 Texans, right? With the support of only 7% of the rest of the people. Do you think that order to go murder Texans because they voted incorrectly is going to stand among the people of the other states, among the military, among the rest of the world? The answer is absolutely no. And that's not idealism. That's not just some sort of, rose-colored glasses. That is the reality of the situation that they face, because they must acknowledge the right of self-determination. And there is absolutely no practical way that they could militarily suppress the outcome of an expression that large of the political will of Texans.
Yeah, man, I hear you.
Let me add something to that as well. The fact is that when you reason with someone, when you lay the facts out to them, you said, so what is true?
All right, just hold tight just on that one statement.
Okay.
So you're telling me that you trust the action of this administration of the United States?
I don't trust the action of any administration of the United States, which is exactly why I want to see Texas as a self-governing independent nation. What I'm telling you is they can go. This administration right now, he could pick up the phone and call the Joint Chiefs and say, invade Texans and go murder them. I want you to go bomb the Walmart in Houston because I don't like the way they voted. What I'm telling you is the consequences for that would be far greater than any negotiated exit for Texas, right? What happens in war? Right? Destruction of infrastructure. If they think they hate $5 a gallon gas up there in those other states right now, welcome to $20 to $50 a gallon gas when they decide that they want to destroy our refineries, right? Sure. What about agricultural production? What about the trade routes that come right out of Laredo, the port of Laredo being larger than the port of Los Angeles, right? So there are consequences. Texas may be the first state to leave, but if they do something so colossally stupid, we won't be the last.
Yeah. Not to cut you off, Mr. Mack. I was whenever we start talking about reasoning together, which I'm familiar with a little bit of that, right. You know, I always go back to the Jack Nicholson quote where the lady comes to him in that movie and she says, how do you write women so well? And he says, I think of a man and I remove logic and reason. So to me, I'm sitting here thinking to myself, you know, how can you reason with unreasonable people?
Well, you can't. You cannot be logical with an illogical person.
There you go.
Okay. Anybody that's raised children understands that, right?
Okay. I've got 4, so I know.
Same here. Here's the story. Okay, Jimmy Johnson, head coach of the Cowboys. They are so close to the Super Bowl, right? And Charles Haley goes on the trading block. 49ers, he's just causing trouble over and over again. 49ers can't handle him. So the discussion comes up about the Cowboys trading for him. And everybody keeps telling Jimmy, no. He's trouble in the locker room. Jimmy said, is he intelligent? And they said, man, when it comes to intelligence on the football field, the guy knows what he's doing. Jimmy said, then I can reason with him. And they went and won 2 Super Bowls together.
Right.
Okay. That's where these facts come in. That's where this reason comes in. When you have someone, and there's a lot more people out there that are ready to reason than we think, because we're still listening to that controlled media again. Right. They're the ones telling us, they're the ones feeding us all this. You get out there in front of people, just like we did at the convention recently. And I'm telling you, the respect, the support, the reception was overwhelming. We'll get into those numbers, I'm sure, in a little bit. So you sit down, you start laying the facts out to someone. If they are reasonable, they're going to hear it, they're going to understand it, they're going to respond to it. We have seen it countless times. When you have someone that's not reasonable, there's nothing really that you can do. And again, I'm going to rely on my preaching. I'm going to rely on my Bible studies and history. Not one time did Jesus ever confront a Pharisee. He never went and searched out a Pharisee. They always came to him, always trying to trap him, always trying to get him to mess up. He never pursued them. They pursued him. Now, he answered the questions. He dealt with them. He dealt with them with truth. But that truth was not what they wanted to hear. He didn't fit their suit. So they disposed of him, right? They said that what he was doing was connected to Beelzebub. They smeared his reputation. They tried to destroy him. The TNM is in the business of truth on these issues. And that is one of the things primarily that drew me to this organization.
Right.
Facts come out.
Welcome back, Kerry.
The Calvinist in me will say that I was predestined to miss that part.
I got you.
Good thing I'm not a Calvinist, right?
Yeah, there you go.
Good for you, I guess.
There you go. So we've been talking a little bit here about the economic strategy, what kind of the plan is, but I figured you had a couple of questions that you wanted to dig in on economics specifically.
Yeah. What are you going to do about those of us who are fixing to go on Medicare? How do you plan to handle that?
Well, there's good news. So let's kind of bust that up into a couple things. And I'll give you a blanket statement, then I'll tell you where you can go find all the specifics. But the good news is there's already existing federal policy that already deals with that. Okay. So when you talk about federal pension benefits, right, or those federal health benefits like the Medicare and the Medicare Trust Fund, 2 separate issues, but let me just go and get the Social Security thing out of the way. This applies to both Social Security and veterans benefits. Any federal pension benefit that you are eligible for, you can draw regardless of where you live, as long as you don't move to Syria, North Korea.
I'm not talking about,
right.
I know about Social Security. I'm talking about Medicare.
Well,
because I draw a pension from the state. Go ahead.
I get it. I understand, but I want to go ahead and take the opportunity to measure twice and cut once. You understand? Okay. Because so when we talk about the Medicare Trust Fund, the one thing to understand is Medicare Trust Fund is the one fund tied to sort of that whole bundle of retirement benefits that's not upside down. As a matter of fact, as it stands right now, Texans hold a tremendous amount of money. Texas, workers have paid a ton of money into those Medicare or the Medicare Trust Fund. So when we talk about, and this was something you missed a moment ago, there are 4 things that happen post-Texit vote. There's constitutional issues that we have to address here, amending our Constitution. There's some statutory issues that we have to deal with. There's international treaties, covenants, and agreements. And the 4th thing is negotiated issues. One of those negotiated issues is the funds that Texans have paid into the Medicare Trust Fund. Additionally, that will be probably tied to the national debt discussion, as well as the disposition of federal property here in Texas. So there's a bundle of those negotiated issues. But the good news is simply this. If for some reason the federal government decides, you know what, we're not going to negotiate it out, you're just screwed. Right? Because they could do that. That would harm them internationally, particularly with their credit. There's a ton of economic blowback for them if they do that. But the other component, the thing to understand is because we are overpaying anywhere from $103 to $160 billion annually into the federal system, we would have plenty of money to cover all the chips on the table. So if Texas had to, without the federal government, carry out the Medicare payments, we have the surplus to do that, and not even bat an eye.
Okay, my next question is this. Are you going to come up with your own currency? And do you think there would be any problems on the FX market concerning this? Do you believe it would be accepted on the FX market? I'll just stop there and let you go with it.
Yeah, that's fine. And when you say will you mean will we create our own currency? Because that's the thing about it. Texans will have the opportunity to do that. It's not my decision, not Mack's decision, not your decision solely. It becomes all of ours, right? But here's what. So
what would you use? Are you going to go ahead and keep using the American dollar like other countries do now?
Well, I was going to
have a central bank.
Well, I was going to use expired Applebee's gift cards, but now that you're pinning me down on it, it sounds like a horrible idea.
But will you have a central bank?
Well, let me answer the first question first.
Okay.
So day one after Texas, we don't have to have our own currency, right? It's not something that's a prerequisite for us to get independence.
Right.
We could continue to use the U.S. dollar and an informal currency union, right? But ultimately, I think where the will of the people of Texas is they're going to want their own currency. It has become a pretty central feature of countries that regain their independence. All these new nation states around the world is they wanted their own currency. While some since 1945 did adopt the U.S. dollar or some other currency, the vast majority developed their own currency. So is it something that Texans are going to want to do? I feel almost 100% certain they're going to want to do that. That being said, your question is, will that currency be recognized, be accepted? And I think there are a couple of components there. Number one is it's going to be, frankly, up to how Texas designs its currency. There are a lot of ideas out there about what that could look like. The good news is Texas already has sort of a ramp up to starting its own currency. Multiple sovereign wealth funds. There's provision tucked in the Texas Gold Depository Act that allowed electronic transactions that were denominated by deposits of precious metals in the depository. There have been plans floated for a state bank that is completely outside the purview of the Federal Reserve already pre-Texas. So Texans are already, and Texas policymakers are already thinking that direction. And I think that sooner rather than later, Texans are going to want their own currency because let's face it, the U.S. currency and the U.S. economy are both in crisis right now. And it doesn't look to get any better. $30 plus trillion worth of debt, plus unfunded liabilities that are on the books to be paid out in the future. The economic outlook for the United States is frankly pretty doggone bleak, and Texas needs to act now or go down with the Titanic.
Well, part of it also is this is going to be a worldwide recession / depression. And right now, the American dollar is as strong as it's ever been. It's today when I checked, it was the euro was 101 to the dollar, and the pound sterling was 119. The yen was 140. which is unbelievably strong. As a matter of fact, it's so the pound sterling is so weak right now. My wife and I are planning a trip to England because we get more bang for our buck at that point in time. Another economics question, if I have it, will you have an income tax?
Texans have expressed not.
I know that we voted against it. I voted against it. Not once, but twice. Yeah. So look, Texas doesn't need an income tax to recoup revenue, right? That is a fallacy that is put forth by the opposition. Okay. So there are two factors that we're going to have to contend with where we can have basically recoup the revenue with the existing sales tax. And it's simply this. Number one, the additional overpayment winds up back into the Texas economy, right? So no more federal overpayment. Now it's floating back around the Texas economy. But there is this other factor that I think plays into it probably even more, and that is rolling back the effects of federal regulatory accumulation, right? Because when we saw the study that was released by George Mason University and one other that did a similar study, they studied the effect of federal regulatory accumulation all the way back to 1949. And what both studies concluded is that it produces a 2% compression of GDP compounded annually. Right. So the outcome of it was that at the time the study was released, the median household income was $54,000. And they said in the absence of the federal regulatory accumulation, it would have been $330,000. Right. So, we're looking at not just that those billions of dollars back in circulation, back in the Texas economy, but we're looking at the wealth destroying federal regulations being rolled back. And we're seeing the elimination of the effects of that compression of GDP. So you're looking at a Texas that has way more money floating through the economy. And you were an economics teacher. You know what happens when people have more discretionary income. They spend it, which means that, you could take a look at the existing consumption tax structure. You don't have to look at a VAT or anything crazy like that, but you start plugging those numbers in, and all of a sudden you get some pretty amazing things. You get not only a fully funded national government, but you get a fully funded military at NATO standards at 2% of GDP. Plus you get to do amazing things that Texans have wanted to do for a long time, like eliminate the property tax because it would no longer be necessary. Okay, let me ask you this question, and this is a little bit, change gears a little bit, and Jay may have asked this, I don't know. Once again, my computer decided it would didn't need to hear it. I didn't need to hear it. What are you going to do about
hair loss? I don't know.
But all of a sudden, the United States decides that we need a passport to go to the United States. Because I know a large number of people who live here in this county who work in Louisiana.
Yeah.
What's going to happen then? Are they going to have to stop every day and go through and get a work visa to work in America?
So right now we know there's about 1 million legal border crossings between Mexico and the United States on the regular, right, on the daily.
Well, I'm talking about going to Louisiana.
Well, I am too. Just I know. Yeah. Just give me a second. So I know you're anxious. But so you have those legal border crossings that take place with nothing more than a border transit card, right? But ultimately, what you're going to see post-Texit is a negotiated travel agreement, right? Some sort of free travel agreement, very likely to happen, very much like you see the Schengen zone in Europe right now, where you can travel across all those countries throughout Europe, throughout the European Union, just simply with your ID, because your point of entry is one of those countries and you're traveling within the Schengen travel zone. So that's not going to be an issue. And frankly, I don't think Texas nor the United States would want it to be that way. I mean, think about the negative economic impact of something like that happening. And so, and I think from a policy standpoint, it becomes very difficult for the federal government to justify where they can let people freely travel across the points of entry from Mexico into the United States with nothing more than a card and deny Texans that same opportunity to travel to Louisiana or Oklahoma or vice versa. Notice I didn't say Arkansas. No offense.
Who wants to go to Arkansas? I better hush. My brother's a graduate of the University of Arkansas.
Say something to break the tension, Mac. It's getting weird.
Just out of curiosity, just out of curiosity's sake, what are you going to do? We're about to have a majority Latino community in Texas. Whether you want to or not, this is going to be ugly the way I'm going to say it. They're outbreeding the Anglos. I'm sorry, but they are. What are you going to do when South Texas decides, hey, we want to be like Mexico, or parts of them decide they want to join Mexico? How are you going to stop that?
Well, look, Texas is a sovereign body politic, right? I mean, Texas is Texas. And so, you know, that's not even in the cards, but let's talk about it from a policy standpoint. I'm going to pitch it over to Mack here in a second, but I want to kick it off with this. If you have traveled down into the Rio Grande Valley recently, one of the things you're going to find is support for Texas independence high. As a matter of fact, first generation, second generation Latino males are the ones that have Texas self-identity first. They polled higher than people my age and your age in identifying themselves as Texans before Americans. So, you know, the fact of the matter is the TNM, one of the statistics that I'm the most proud of, is that our supporters are a more representative cross-section of Texas as a whole than either major political party. So when people talk about this demographic shift, I don't bat an eye, because people that, regardless of their heritage, where they come from, all of those things, the ones that are supporting independence are the ones that believe in work, keeping what they earn, self-government, and the rule of law. And that applies regardless of their ethnic background. And I know Mack has seen that practically out there in the field.
I've lived on the border, lived in Del Rio for 4 years, lived in Uvalde for a couple of years. And that was my experience with them as well. Now, this idea of trying to take over, that attitude has been there for a long time. It was there when I lived in Del Rio close to 30 years ago. The fact of the matter is that the people who do come here legally, especially in that community, the Hispanic Latino community, many of them that I spoke with resent the fact that it is not being done that way across the board. They do identify themselves as Texans. I've seen it firsthand. So the inroads into the Hispanic community is growing. I think we're going to see a lot of support where that is concerned, because being a Texan is an attitude. It's a frame of mind. It's how we think. It's not what my skin color is or what my gender is. It's not how fat my wallet is or isn't. It is a person that wants to be free and make their own decisions. And that permeates all cultures, all ethnic groups, anything. That's who we're looking for, and that's how we're growing.
So having said that, let's touch a little bit on some of what's going on at the border. Now, I checked out some of the interviews here over the past week or so, and from what I was able to gather, there are some counties, border counties, that are pushing forward with declaring an invasion.
Yeah.
So if we're looking at this thing, you know, considering what we've just said, considering what you guys have just said, which, I mean, to be honest with you, I mean, you know, I'm in the oil and gas business. And I mean, so to me, you know, the Hispanic population in oil and gas wouldn't survive if it wasn't for the Hispanic population. That's just a fact. And all of the guys that I know are by and large Texan at heart. I mean, and so, but at the same time, you know, taking this in consideration with what the counties are doing, you know, what's kind of the story? What's the story on that? And I know you've been a little disappointed with our fearless leader in Austin.
Wow, you said fearless, and I'm hoping that was ironic. You know,
exactly.
Look, it's no secret that we've been that me in particular, but the organization has been very critical of Governor Abbott's actions on the border. And I'll just roll this back. My first foray down to the border to get a firsthand look at what was happening down there was in 2001. And when I was down there touring a ranch and I saw someone sighting me in with a rifle from across the river, I knew that there was a problem. And it was way more than just that one instance, right? But we've had a border crisis that has existed between Texas and Mexico for quite some time. This is not brand new. Greg Abbott did not create this problem. Joe Biden did not create this problem. It has been growing and growing and growing. And so here we are at this day and age. This is where it sits. We know that on June 6, 1944, 160,000 Allied troops landed on the beaches of Normandy in what was arguably the greatest amphibious invasion in modern history. And yet, as of, I guess, probably last month, we have that many illegal aliens crossing the border every single solitary month. Okay. Some people say, well, so what? They're refugees. Well, here's what the so what. That border crisis is being facilitated by the federal government, aided by narco-criminal terrorist gangs called the cartels, which those border sheriffs will tell you are effectively in control of the border. It has driven Texas to become the #1 state in human and sex trafficking, and all of our major cities to be all in the top 10 for human and sex trafficking. We're talking about sex slaves, 11-year-old children and younger being used as sex slaves because the federal government refuses to secure the border. So when the federal government refuses to do its job, and we're talking pre-Texit, right? But if the federal government refuses to do its job, it is within the power of the governor to invoke his powers as commander-in-chief, to declare it an invasion and call the full might of the Texas Military Department to go down and secure the border in the absence of federal action. It's fully within the rights, but instead what we get is we get half measures. And while we get half measures, we get stories like those of Dan Golvach in Houston, a gentleman that we know that I have known for many years, whose son Spencer was shot in the head by a 3-time deported illegal alien who was a felon, who kept coming back because they won't secure the border, right? And more stories like that happen every single solitary day. So we're in a situation where Greg Abbott, as governor, has had the opportunity to challenge the federal government to say, you know what, forget the DOJ, forget the Biden administration. I'm going to do what's right for the people of Texas. I'm going to declare an invasion. I'm going to fully militarize the state guard, and I will belly them up to the river. And I'll be damned if I'm going to let the cartels run the Rio Grande Valley. He had an opportunity to do that, and he has failed on multiple occasions to do so. So, yes, if you find me in the organization quite critical of Greg Abbott, it's because I expect someone who is elected in office in Texas to do everything they can for Texans, and that includes securing our border and protecting our citizens. And that is doubly true for the commander-in-chief of the Texas Military Forces.
That is the function of government at its finest. It is to protect and support the good and to punish the evil. My youngest son was deployed to the Texas border. He called me one night. He said, "Dad, we can't do anything. We can't do anything. All we can do is take pictures and watch them cross." He said, "The Border Patrol is not allowed to do anything." He said, "Why am I here?" Is that leadership for you?
No, I think there's a lack of leadership across the board.
Absolutely.
You know, there's a lack of leadership. I mean, in the state, there's a lack of leadership federally. You know, it almost makes you. It almost makes you wish that you had some. It almost makes you wish that you had some statesmen.
Well, it makes me wish I had Texas, because here's the bottom line. The only way we will ever get full control over our border and immigration policy is to become a self-governing independent nation, right? I mean, that's just the bottom line. We have a governor right now who will not pull the trigger on declaring an invasion because he's afraid of running afoul of the federal government and the DOJ in a federal court, right? And is unsure whether or not he has the fortitude to stand between the federal government and prosecutions of Texas military forces that would actually return fire on the cartels. That's cowardice, right? And so when you have Texas independence, you don't have to worry about those things, whether it's political opportunism or fear of dealing with the feds. The fact of the matter is, the only way we will ever secure our border and have full control over our immigration policy is to become a self-governing independent nation among nations.
Part of the problem, and it's been like this since I've been alive. We can't elect anybody in this state or nationally that's worth a flip. And it worries me, if we become independent, will we continue with poor statesmen in Austin? You know, there's that old saying in which no Texan's life, liberty, or property is safe while the Texas legislature is in session. And how will we know it's any better? Because I look at that bunch that's up there now, they can't even run the schools nor keep the highways running. You know, the highways are in the worst shape they've been since I can remember.
Yeah, I don't know. To be honest with you, man, I mean, hearing what you're saying there, Kerry, to me, I don't know if all the questions can be answered, because I'll be honest with you. I think if you have a Texas situation, that's a complete different ballgame. That's a completely different ballgame. And to be honest with you, you know as well as I do, the majority of those who have run for the governor's seat had aspirations outside of the governor's seat federally. And so to me, if Texas becomes its own nation, then obviously that's going to change. It should change dramatically. And so, you know, I don't know. So let me.
Yeah, you go. You just hit on the secret cure to electile dysfunction. You saw Mack. I mean, I saw you got one in the queue. He just literally hit on it, didn't he?
Well, I'll tell you what. Go look at the Take Texas Back pledge candidates. That list is growing every day. Okay. So there are people who are listening. There are people who want to lead that are listening.
Right.
They're paying attention to this. Okay. So we worry about continuing to elect leaders that won't do their jobs. What we're doing is we're laying responsibility on ourselves. The Texas Constitution says the power is in us. And we have been robbed of that by this misinformation, disinformation. The power is in us. We're the ones who can do something about it. And
but part of the problem is we can't get anybody worth a flip to run. Nobody wants the job.
Man, I'm sitting right here. I'm literally sitting right here.
Daniel ran for lieutenant governor.
Just ran.
He ran for lieutenant governor.
I thought we were friends. How many votes did you get?
Well, that's a great question. Maybe we need to have a conversation about election integrity. But here's my question. If I were to ask you this question, what does politics run on? What would your answer be? Cash, money, right? Cash. So I want you to think about this. As it stands right now, it is unrestricted cash flowing into campaign coffers for Texas politicians from wherever they can get it. Mm-hmm. And primarily, many of these guys are propped up by PACs and celebrities in Hollywood and K Street lobbyists, right? They have tons of money flowing into their campaign coffers from outside of Texas. Post-Texit, those are foreign campaign contributions. Just like they couldn't take money from China or Russia or any other country, now all of a sudden they can't take it from California or New York or K Street lobbyists in Washington, D.C. Foreign cash. Imagine just that one change alone, how that changes the face of the electoral system here in Texas. And then imagine, right, when the highest land in the office is there, Austin. That's as high as it can get. Nobody, they're not running. They're not thinking about the caucuses in Iowa or the primaries in New Hampshire for their, failed runs for president. The highest office in the land, as high as they can go, is that Capitol there in Austin. So who do they serve? And the third thing, and I'll leave you with this. If you were to go out right now and survey 100 random people in your community, I know that may be a tad hard because I know where you live and there's just a railroad track, but because we talked about that before. But that being said, if you were to go survey 100 random people and ask them this question, who is the current Speaker of the House? Who do you think they would answer?
Probably wouldn't know. Are you talking about in Texas, or are you talking about
just ask them the flat question?
Okay.
Who is the Speaker of the House? Who do you think they would say?
In the U.S., they'd probably say Pelosi.
Well, you're not even specifying, but you hit on it, right? Because
they'd say Pelosi instead of Dade.
Instead of Dade, right? Because think about it. The 24 hour, and this goes to what Mack was saying earlier, the 24-hour news cycle is consumed with that circus there in Mordor on the Potomac, right? I mean, that's where everyone's attention is. Imagine now that is out of the equation. Imagine the attention that gets turned into our government in Austin and our governments in our counties and in our cities, because we're no longer being saturated with that circus. All of a sudden now, all of these things that these elected officials that make us so angry at them that they get by with because they fly under the radar because Nancy Pelosi said something stupid or Biden fell off a bicycle or what, Trump tweeted something, right? All of that goes away. And now the focus is here. Imagine, where do they run? Where do they hide when they do these misdeeds? Imagine the engaged electorate. And I don't say this as the promise of utopia. I'm telling you that this is what we have seen 140 other times over in the countries that have become self-governing independent nations since World War II. This is what happens. Accountable government, finally.
So tell us where you guys are located online so people can find out more information about you guys.
TNM.me.
TNM.me. Okay.
That's the
and matter of fact, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Matter of fact, I had looked over here. There are a number of events that you guys got that's actually set up. There's an event button at the top of the page if people want to actually go to a meetup.
Absolutely. The Jasper group, you're going to have to forgive me because there are so many that I can't keep track of all of them.
Sure.
But the Jasper group meets once a month at Smitty's Barbecue. Livingston has just become set up with an LC, a local coordinator, and they're also meeting once a month. Lufkin meets once a month. Woodville is the, oh my goodness, second Monday, I think, of the month. I'm gonna have to look at that again. That's coming up. They also have a Tyler County meeting coming up on the 19th.
Okay.
So yeah, those meetings are there. We load them up. We try to get them at least 90 days in advance if we can, to give everybody time to look at it and to come out to the meetings and ask the questions. Okay.
Absolutely.
I'm going to tell you, for me as a local coordinator, I've been in the organization, as I said, about 2 years. All right. I'm still a newbie. I'm still learning all those things that Daniel has been talking about. I'm learning those things by osmosis. Okay. I'm reading, absorbing what I can. I'm not afraid to tell somebody, Carrie, I'm not afraid to say, I don't know. Okay. I'd rather tell you, I don't know. Let's go find the facts and then we can figure out the answer. Right. So I have no problem saying that. But at those meetings, at those local meetings, that's where the questions get asked. And if something gets asked that I don't know or another local coordinator doesn't know, we got a network in place to where we can go find the answers. And if it's something that's never been asked, we're going to investigate it. We want the truth. That's what we want. And that's why when you start looking for the truth, these leaders that you're worried about, as Daniel said, they can't hide. It's a lot easier to drive to Austin than it is to fly to Washington, D.C. Sure. And when you get face to face with somebody, it's a whole different ballgame. We're brave on the telephone, but when somebody's eyeball to eyeball with you, it's a whole different battle at that point.
Yeah, it's almost like the Facebook warriors. I've met a few of those face to face, and it's kind of funny, to be honest with you, who you're actually being confronted with. Yeah. And so, one of the other things I wanted you guys to touch on, specific to support. Say you got people out here who don't want to wait on these meetings. What do they need to do? Say they go over to the website and they're sitting here and they're digging in. What's the next steps for them?
Sure. So, Mack, I saw you getting ready to start, but I would say this. I would encourage people to first and foremost, if they have Texit questions, go to texitnow.org, right? Everything that we have in the Texit book The 100 most asked questions are there, completely searchable database with answers in excruciating detail. But beyond that, we want people to go there and take action, to register their support. Right, Mack?
Absolutely. There's something about numbers. There's something about presence. Okay. Again, my preacher's going to come out in me. Okay, Kerry, I'm sorry. It's going to come out. Right?
That's all right. I'm an alumni of Southwestern Baptist Theological Seminary. So go ahead.
These people, they don't want to go to church, right? But they all want to go to heaven. We don't want to hang around those people there, but we're going to live with them forever. There's something wrong with that. I'm just telling you. All right. The same thing here with these folks. There are so many, even now, that we've not been able to contact that are thinking this way. They feel this way. They're looking. They're trying to find something just like I was. If we can get them aware of these local meetings, it gives them a chance to go and be a part of that, to join. It's $30 a year to become a member of the Texas Nationalist movement, $30 a year. Every now and then I put a plug in to Daniel and the administration to bump that up a little bit, at least make it 36, 1836, right? But $30 a year. All right. We're all volunteers. We're all volunteers. When I drive to Jasper to do a meeting, I'm paying them the gas myself. That's my time. That's my gasoline. Okay. That's how much we believe in this. And they were all across the state. So these people can join. That helps. It helps us get the word out. All right. So come to the meetings. Bring your questions. Be prepared to interact with people that think like you do. You're not alone. A lot of people have the Elijah complex. He said, Lord, I'm the only one left. God said, there's 7,000 out there that you're not aware of. Yeah. And you know what? Even if you are the only one, Daniel, you and Kara have been the only ones. You were the only two to walk into a room at one point, not so many years ago. You were alone. Noah was by himself. Okay. It only takes one person to be a trailblazer. All right. We need some people that will have some courage. They'll take a stand. They'll investigate. Let us reason these things out. Let us give you the truth and the facts. If we don't know the answers, let's go find them. Ask us questions that we haven't investigated. All it's going to do is help.
Speaking of that,
be free. Let us be free.
Speaking of that, as far as the answers, how do people go about getting the Texic book?
You can get that right on the TNM's website, tnm.me, right there in the TNM store. It's available on Amazon. It's been an Amazon bestseller 4 different times. I think it's still on Barnes and Noble. Oh yeah, so we're gonna show copies.
Yeah, let's go ahead.
I keep blocking myself out there.
But but this is what I encourage people about. Whether it's the book or the website or whatever, it's simply this: if anyone's on the fence, kind of like your Sasquatch fans and lizard people fans from earlier in the conversation. Look, here's what it boils down to. With all the different questions that everyone has. I mean, we can get into the minutia of sports teams, and I mean, there's all kinds. But look, just ask yourself this question: if Texas was already a self-governing independent nation, right? We had control over our own border policy, our own immigration policy, our own currency, our own military, our own embassies and passports, our own Olympic team, all the things that 200 self-governing independent nations around the world have. Instead of talking about Texas, we were having a debate over whether or not Texas should join the union. Knowing everything you know about the federal government right now, today, would you vote to join the union?
That's an obvious no.
Well, if it's a no, if you wouldn't vote to join, then why would you ever vote to stay? And that's why people need to come connect with us at the Texas Nationalist Movement. Get the answers at texitnow.org. Head over to the website, tnm.me. Or go see Mack's friendly face at one of the local events, man. I'm going to tell you, Mack is a rock star local coordinator for us. He has done a phenomenal job, and he never says quit. Once he found his home in the TNM and knew he had an outlet to help make Texas independence a reality, he's latched on like a pit bull and will not let go. So do yourselves a favor. Go to his meetings, go help him out, help him organize in East Texas.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you're out there and you want to get involved, you can go over to tnm.me. That's Texas Nationalist Movement. You can look them up on in Google. You can look them up on Facebook, all social medias, right?
Every stinking one of them.
Every one of them. Okay. Texas,
including we launched our own. We actually
Really?
just launched our own social network and our own mobile app. So check that out on the website as well.
Absolutely. Okay. Very cool. Very cool. Are there any final statements, Daniel and Mac? Are there any final statements that you guys would like to put out there to the people? You know, I mean, I'm up here in Newton. You know, I know folks in Newton think this way.
I'm gonna be there on the 15th, by the way.
Say it again. Yeah, I know. I actually saw that.
Yeah.
I actually saw that. I put that on my schedule. But yeah, man, there are folks up here, but you know, going back to some of the topics we talked about earlier, you know, they want a sensible transition. And everything everybody talks about is, hey, man, you know, I just bought this reloader and I've got me some uppers and some lowers coming in and this type of thing. So it gets into this whole other world of maybe more Texas militia type of stuff. But to be honest with you, if there is a sensible, rational way to approach this topic, you know, for me, I'm a diehard Texan, and I am sitting here going, okay, these guys just up the ante on me in a real way, not some sort of superficial way, not a lot of flowery words, but in a very real way, whether or not I really want to man up as a Texan and help support the cause. So having said that, what's the last thing that you want to put out here to the people?
Daniel, I'll go ahead if that's all right, so you can have the last word. Is that all right?
Go for it, amigo.
All right. Listen, I've mentioned this story before. I used to be in business. One of the businesses that I owned in Kentucky when we lived up there, I was preaching up there. And we would go to our conventions. And Terry, they were in Las Vegas, preacher in Las Vegas. Now, that's a fish out of water, let me tell you. It was an international company. We remanufactured toner cartridges for printers and copiers and fax machines. So there are people literally from all over the world, several thousand that would gather for this. I cannot tell you the number of times in the 4 years that I attended those conventions, people would hear my voice and they would not say, "Are you from the United States?" They'd say, "Are you from Texas?" They knew where I was from. Okay. And of course, being a Texan, I'm glad to tell them, right? If you don't ask me, I'll volunteer it. Now, we joke about that. I had a lot of fun with friends all across the states. I've preached all across the southeastern U.S., and we have a lot of fun about that. But I'm going to tell you, Texas has its own culture. We have our own way of life. We have our own way that we think about things, okay? That means something. When you start looking up nations and states and cultures and things of that nature, those things become a part of that. They make that up. So what I want to tell the folks who are listening to this in a last word, we want to do this peacefully. We don't want to put our grandkids in harm's way. We want to do it peacefully. And the way that we do that is at the ballot box, because your vote is your voice. Now, whenever your voice is squelched or robbed, you are either relegated to the status of a child or you're a slave. So when we vote on this, as Daniel was talking about earlier, when Texans speak their mind, this is all we're asking. Texas should reassert its status as an independent nation, for or against. Even people who would be opposed to Texas should not be opposed to the vote. The Texas Constitution says we can discuss this. It's part of it. Article 1, Section 1 and 2. This is part of it. We're not asking for brand new Ford F-150s. We're not asking for government handouts. We're asking for the basic thing that free men deal with, and that is speaking their voice. Free men don't ask permission. They speak their voice, and your vote does that. So we are calling on all legal, registered Texas voters to step up, step in, get busy, support the vote, and let us say yes or no, one way or the other. And we can decide this thing.
Daniel?
Yeah, it's absolutely true. And, you know, just to piggyback off of what what Max said. And I guess maybe bring it to that 35,000 foot view. I've said this, you watch some of the interviews, so you probably have heard me say this. Max probably heard it enough that he wants to gag at this point, but I sincerely believe the next 100 years of Texas history are being written right now, like this very moment. And the challenge that is being put to the people of Texas, to our generation right now, is, are we going to be the ones to write that history, or are we going to let it be written for us? Because I will tell you, there are social engineers, neo-Marxists out there that are more than willing to write our history, to erase Texas from the map as we know Texas. And so future generations are counting on us to carry the flame of independence and liberty that was handed to us by the blood of men like Colonel Travis and Bowie and Crockett, by those that the very few that died on the field at San Jacinto, but those that were massacred at Goliad. They gave us a legacy. It is up to us to honor that legacy and carry it forward and preserve it for future generations. And that's happening right now. So do we write our own history, or do we let it be written for us? Well, this is where we're going to be defined. How will history remember us? They're going to remember us by what we did right here at this time, right now.
Ladies and gentlemen, Daniel Miller and Mack Dunkin, both of the Texas Nationalist movement. If you get a chance, go check them out online at tnm.me. You can also check them out on all forms of social media. Go to Texas Nationalist Movement. Just search them, look for them. They've been there, and they've been, like the song says, we've been here for years. They've also got events. Go over to the website, check out the events. They've also got clothing. This is the thing I was looking for. I was looking for the swag. I was looking for the clothing. That's what I'm trying to check out myself. Now, go over there. They've got all kind of interesting information. If you want to find out more about the Texit process, go over to the store or go to Amazon, and you can pick up the manual on how to do this sensibly and peaceably. Man, once again, we really appreciate you guys for taking your time with us and in sitting in and fielding some of our questions here, even as novice as some of the ones I post. But to be honest with you, man, we really appreciate the effort. We appreciate the work you guys have been doing. Daniel, like I say, I've been watching you since about 2010, I think it is. And I'm just glad to know that there's some reason and logic going into a lot of this. I'm really appreciative of the work. And Kerry, you got any last statements you want to make?
Good luck to you.
Thank you.
That's all I'm going to say.
There you go. Hey, well, here's the thing, man. It boils down to this. It boils down to numbers, and it boils down to cash. You know what I mean? And so, Mr. Mack has been a preacher. Are you still a preacher right now?
Still am.
Still a preacher.
Preaching Zavala where they need preaching.
There you go. There you go. Zavala's kind of like Newton, so we're probably cousins. So, ladies and gentlemen, check them out online. Check them out on Facebook. Check them out on YouTube. You have been listening to Not on the Payroll right here at notonthepayroll.com. We're with you every Thursday night, 7 o'clock. And you can check us out as well on Facebook. Check us out on YouTube and also on Rumble. Ladies and gentlemen, if you are looking to secede from the Union, we might have found the way right here. Have a good night.